Hey, I didn't even need your hand because I actually saw it go live right when you were bringing up your hand to let me know it was live.
Whoa. Timing,
Progress.
Everything.
It must be because of our guest that's coming up. But in the meantime, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we have a little something special this time around. Right?
Yeah, you do?
I think so. We do. This is a bit of a special edition. Remember we did like the road to Pega World? You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, so there's another conference coming up next week. So we're back on the road again, although it's virtually back on the road, right? I mean, we're still
back on the road with seats planted, let's just say.
Oh, and look, now we can start the show because Sven is back and he's talking multilingual here.
Oh, I don't. Now, this one, is that Swedish, maybe?
Well, he said at least he let us know what it is this time around. That's Danish.
I thought it was Swedish. Okay.
I thought it was bagel. No, I'm not going there today.
No.
No. So we are on the road, virtually speaking, to Xperience 21. Every time
like Crosby and Hope.
What happened to Stills and Nash? Oh man, that was bad. That was even I had to stay. It can never be bad as that. No, we won't bring that up. But anyway, Xperience 21 Genesys big user conference is coming up next week. It's virtual. And so we're going to spend some time discussing that and discussing what's going on at Genesys and learning more about things, because one of our favorite folks that has been on the show before is back. His name is John Hernandez. His face looks like this.
Hey, man.
What's going on? How are you guys?
Doing good.
We see you're dressed appropriately for the occasion.
Hey, I know when I come on this show, I mean, look, full respect to the Rams and the Giants, good NFC teams, but you got to represent the Raiders whenever coming on.
Look at that. He's sporting the Giants. You got the Raiders. I'm always wearing some kind of Ram.
Yeah, that's like, if you're not, that's the surprise.
And look who's showing up. It's Ginger Conlon, a former player in residence who I guess decided to step up in class and go to work with John.
That's right. Went from AAA up to.
Look how many people are glad to see Ginger. I mean, we're here too, guys. Just like
I know. And now Ginger went from thought leadership with us to thought leadership at Genesys, which is
that's a big step up. Yeah,
it is.
Thank you.
I have to say that went from meaning half asleep to fully awake.
No, it's good to have you. First, you are the EVP and GM of the Multicloud at Genesys Solutions for Multicloud. Thanks for joining us, man. It's good to see you.
It's always great to see you guys. I wish it was in person at some point again, but hey, we'll take this. It's always good to reconnect.
And before we do get too far into the the kind of conversation, what we're here to talk about, I do, since you got that nice shirt on, I would love to kind of get your take on this little thing this little video I found. Let's see what this is. I don't even know what it is. Let's take a look at it all together.
Lost the football. It's on the ground, covered by the Raiders.
Now,
that's teammate Charles Woodson on the blitz.
I was feeling good right about then.
Tom Brady never sees him coming.
I was at a buddy's wedding.
Greg Beekert recovers.
Whole family is from Boston.
Charles Woodson,
San Francisco wedding.
Come on a blitz.
I have this jersey on in church with a speaker in my ear, listening to this game with a suit on over. You know how sweaty you get with this jersey on?
I didn't even know it could be done.
I bet you were feeling so good at this point.
Oh, I thought it was a shoe. Yeah. Anyway, turn this on. Get my blood boiling.
Oh, and this is where it went terribly wrong. What are they looking at? Why are they looking at anything here? Come on. Look, Belichick is Belichick.
Oh my God.
All right, enough.
Enough.
Even I've had enough of that. Okay.
I know, me too. Me too, and I didn't care about it at all. Right, and I had enough of it.
You're gonna have night sweats tonight.
Oh, all right. I just thought we would, because we all hate the Patriots. We can all be our own care group as we watched it. Okay. So, it hasn't even been a year since we talked to you last, because I believe you started with Genesys, or coming back, because you were at Genesys about 18, 19 years ago. You came back, turn of the century. Yeah, you like saying that because we have you on the other
2 centuries of Genesys.
So you're kind of fresh back, because we talked to you in August. You've been there a couple of months. Let me play a clip, because you kind of talk about coming back and like what it's like to come back and what kind of brought you back. So I thought we'd play that and then we pick things up.
Sounds good. Back in 2005, 6, 7 range, back in our Cisco days together then. And so he and I reconnected last summer at the Xperience show in Denver. He had just come on as CEO. I was running a MarTech firm called Celligent at the time. And he and I just started collaborating on things that he was seeing in the industry, things that were top of mind for him, things that I had been seeing in some of the customers that I was working with in the MarTech space. And we really saw this convergence of data and insight and organizations of marketing, sales, and service. And as he started shaping the future for Genesys and coming up with the vision that we have today within the company around experience as a service, he really broadened that concept out and started adding things like employee and consumer data and AI and machine learning and predictability into the mix on top of that. And overarching, adding the whole concept of empathy. And, we say empathy, a lot of folks say it out there. It's not just being nice, it's actually listening and digesting and acting upon that information to really provide that relevance. And so, the company's gone through a pretty big transformation in the last year, just under Tony's leadership, and the company's thriving over it right now, which is great to see.
Man, so first of all, I commend you on that plant. Is in the exact same spot that it was in a year ago.
I added a couple other candles and things.
So you had just kind of gotten there, and you were explaining kind of what brought you back, and kind of where things stood at that moment. You were a year into it now. Tell us where things are, how have things progressed, and particularly, the empathy part. I thought it was really interesting as you kind of weave empathy into kind of the overarching theme of some of the things that you and Tony had been kind of talking about, and then what he put into place, and then how you fit into that with what you're doing. I think you were just announcing the multi-cloud at that point, but give us a refresher before we get into some of the other things that we want.
Yeah, for sure. So, as we said in the, 8-9 months ago, it's been the execution of that with customers and partners alike, and rolling out some of these types of applications that, when we say empathy again, it's not being nice, it's being responsive to what you're hearing and being accommodating into what the customer and consumer and partner needs are within that. And so through COVID, we saw, rapid deployment of things like digital and cloud and AI technologies to help scale the empathetic approach of this experience as a service that we're seeing our customers, our enterprise customers, deploying into the markets out there. We've seen, for example, Whirlpool. Whirlpool is a great example of they sell appliances, and they use retailers like the Best Buys of the world to reach consumers to sell these appliances. So they're kind of one part removed from the customer touch point, but the ability to tie that in through an approach of workflow and routing and connections to where a consumer can buy from a retailer and yet still have a relationship with Whirlpool to make it a frictionless experience of either acquiring or servicing those technologies is just a fantastic way to have the seamless customer journey execution with the consumer, build brand, and deliver that service that is an empathetic way of being responsive to the needs of that customer. Just lots of work in many different areas around that over the last 8 or 9 months. And the execution and customers adopting that type of model has been fantastic to see.
So, given that, I mean, one of the things that, if you look at sort of historic Genesys, it tended to be IVR, contact center. If people viewed it from the standpoint of left and right brain, so to speak, it would be left brain company, meaning with hardware and metrics and, and things that at the time contact centers were actually looking for too. But you're now speaking to a corporate culture and actually an overarching message that's changed dramatically. I mean, you've actually moved from that sort of contact center to more engagement and empathy, of course, and also a much more right-brained and emotional pull with the company, and the corporate culture has reflected that. Now, the thing that interests me is you're coming into Xperience, and it's another year evolved, and we've gone through the pandemic and are continuing through it to hopefully its conclusion. And in the meantime, you have Xperience coming up, and it's been characterized in almost all the releases I've seen as a customer-first conference. And given everything that you've stated, obviously you can see generally why. Aside from the fact you're going to have a lot of customers actually speaking, why and how do you characterize that as a customer-first conference, and what's that actually mean in terms of what people can expect?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that we definitely recognized, all of us as humanity, and COVID has taught us that what really matters is connection, right? We're doing it virtually. We're starting to get back to in person, but I think it really made us all step back as, human beings and say that connection is so critical for relationship and just engagement overall. And so when you take that learning and you put it into, customer service, and you put it into sales, and you put it into experience for consumers, at the end of the day, experience absolutely trumps brand, and empathy is the cornerstone of all of that. It is, again, being responsive to what your buyer, your consumer, your business customer is looking for as a brand. And so when you think about it in that fashion, it makes complete sense that, yes, we do build technologies that customers use, our enterprise customers use, to drive interactions and connections, but it's really tying into not only their overall ecosystem of like MarTech stack or voice of the customer. We just announced a partnership with Qualtrics leading into those data points give us insight. You got an abandoned shopping basket. You have a need to purchase something. The MarTech tools know all that stuff. You got the voice of the customer and what's happening in real time. Are they going through a situation where we can add some assistance as a brand? That type of insight really allows our platforms to take that in and be responsive and empathetic to the engagement that's going on. That's where the world has gone. That's how these technologies have evolved, and ties right into that to getting us back to making those connections that we know are so important for us.
You said something that I'd like you to actually elaborate on, which I found really interesting. I mean, you said experience trumps brand, right? Which I only have a right brain. I don't even have a left brain, so I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I'm so right-brained that I, honest to God, thought my right brain was on the right side of my head, for years, because I didn't even know there was a left brain. So, I would love for you to elaborate on that, because I think that is something that people really need to hear.
Yeah. I mean, and we see it. So we just had a study done. We call it the Connected Customer Experience Report. We just wrapped that up, and some key nuggets in there that dovetail into it. 70% of consumers in that study say a company is only as good as its service. I mean, that's pretty powerful, right? Mm-hmm. That's not saying I'm buying on price, I'm buying on product. I'm buying on if you are going to service me in a fashion that I expect. And as consumers, we have all stepped up our expectation of what that means as a baseline, right? I mean, I take a look at my kids. If you're not engaged with them in the place that they're at, TikTok, Instagram, and you don't have seamless ways to purchase things, i.e. pre-fill out a form or use Apple Pay or whatever way to just make it seamless, you're not doing business with them. They'll give up your product if you don't provide that seamless service to make it frictionless for them. And then we also saw that more than 2/3, around 67, 68%, prefer empathetic customer services experiences over speedy ones. So that's saying, hey, I might be an asynchronous connection. We're going to have this conversation over hours, sometimes days, and we're going to come back and forth on it. I'm not looking for you to try and speed the recovery of it. I'm looking for the best empathetic customer experience. So, when you think about those types of nuggets coming directly from consumers in this survey, it really feeds right into what we're saying around experience trumps brand.
The theme of empathy has come up several times already. We've only been talking a little while. And how has the role of empathy influenced or impacted the collaboration you see between your customers and Genesys, particularly when it comes to kind of expanding the traditional way people looked at the contact center to the overarching view of customer experience, which has a lot of more components beyond the contact center. So how has that empathy played a role in the changing dynamic between you and your customers as you start to talk about customer experience as a whole and not specifically around the contact center?
Yeah. A big one is what we kicked off the conversation today about, and the video you shared from when we launched Multicloud last August. It was being empathetic and listening to our customers in the market and responding in kind. So what Multicloud is, it really is an industry initiative led by Genesys, but supported by many, meaning every company that uses my platform, every enterprise customer of mine, they all want the same functionality, right? Everybody wants phone, everybody wants email, chat, WhatsApp, all those types of things are critical to them. Now, at the end of the day, they all want to consume it differently, right? Well, some use, Adobe for their marketing stack. Some use Oracle for their marketing stack. Some use Salesforce CRM for certain components. Some use Google for their bots, right? Who are we to say, hey, you must take everything from us and that's the way it's going to be? That would not be empathetic to the needs of our enterprise buyers. And so we came up with the multi-cloud strategy and are executing against in the market of saying, it also means multi-vendor and being responsive to your needs as an enterprise customer of mine to make sure we tie into that. So that's one big area of being empathetic to our buyers, which allows them to take those tools they have in their enterprise and be empathetic to their customers, because they can now be personalized. There could be digital touch points that are personalized and proactive and not wait for the consumer to reach out to them, or notice that they're having car problems and reach out and schedule a service before the consumer even calls. Like, these are the types of things that empathy goes on down the line from the vendors to the enterprise customers to the consumers that are ultimately touching it. And so that's a big one. But the other big one that we saw over the last year is all about sustainability and inclusion. And so when we think about, technology is great for driving some of these things we talked about, but we also need to be very focused on those two big topics of sustainability and inclusion. So over the last time since we've gotten together, we've brought on a chief sustainability officer and a chief diversity and inclusion officer. And I can tell you firsthand, as a part of the executive leadership team at Genesys on Tony Bates, our CEO's team, we've been through an immersive training and experience around diversity and inclusion. It's been great to reflect on, our lives over these many years for all of us and think about what we could be doing differently to be absolutely much more inclusive as we think about hiring, as we think about programs. Everything around all of that is very critical, and we're taking it very seriously to drive that awareness into the company. So that's one big one. But on the sustainability side is also bringing in a chief sustainability officer that says, hey, you know what? this is good for the planet. This is good for our customers. This is good for consumers. And so we've made the claim. We just released our first sustainability report just last week. And one of the big things, our target in that is to become carbon neutral by 2030. And that means moving customers, helping them migrate from on-prem equipment that consumes a tremendous amount of energy and footprint in their organizations, and move it to a more energy efficient cloud model. And so we got lots of things in flight on that stuff, but to your question, it's about technology and how we're empathetic to the needs, but it's also about sustainability and inclusion.
We wanted to go with a question that one of our players in residence on and Tucker threw out here. How do you see the best brands measure meaningful connections and empathy? Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. So Peter Graff, our Chief Strategy Officer, is actually going to run a session on this next week around that of like a index to start thinking about how do we just, we got NPS scores of the past and customer surveys, but there's other triggers that come in that feed this index. And Peter's going to go through it next week, which is great. It's all a part of this whole movement that we're talking about. And you got to imagine, like, it is a huge topic with the biggest brands around the world that are going to be in some of these discussion forums on just that topic.
Actually, but before we get to the next question, when you said earlier on, when you were talking in the beginning of your conversation, you went, as we showed somewhat in that first video, I literally thinking, what about the Raiders Patriots video had anything to do with empathy, right? I just
absolutely nothing.
I literally was sitting there thinking that until the one about you.
That's buddies just winding each other up just to kind of reduce the stress.
Yeah, I said, wow, that wasn't empathetic in the slightest. So, all right, well, so here's another thing that I've noticed over recent period. Certainly, I mean, I can't say I've had, I'll call it over the years, intermittent but consistent when I was having it relationships with Genesys, right? And they've been fascinating. And one of the things I've noticed now is that the team, well, you're there, of course, and that's a big indicator of this. You actually really seem to enjoy each other's company and presence, and you're actually, let's say, all in all, a very likable bunch. And now, that said, you have conferences, okay, and every event, every conference, if I a year from now tell you to someone who attended Xperience 2021, what was the main theme of the conference? And this, by the way, could also be a Genesys employee as well as just an attendee. They're going to go, well, I don't remember, but I really, really enjoyed the conference, right? And that's because that's the nature of all conferences. No one ever remembers the actual theme, right? What you remember is what kind of time you had, right? It was a good time. We enjoyed ourselves. It was wonderful, right there. Everything about it. And that's, that's a great answer, not a bad answer. So my question becomes, when it comes to Xperience, how are you planning effectively so that when people leave it, your customers, your potential customers, the analysts who attend, the partners, all come out feeling, wow, that was great. And a year later, they say, wow, that was great. Yeah. What are you planning to do that with that?
Well, the number one thing is back to connections. It's all about the community. It's all about the community coming back together and sharing ideas and best practices. We have these customer forums that we run throughout the year, call them roundtables, where big meaty topics are put on the table, like work from home agents. Who's going back to the office? Who's not? What does digital look like in your footprint? And how's it augmenting calls? What is AI? So there's these big meaty topics. So getting the big mass of all customers in a sense of community to be able to share those types of things at scale, that's the biggest thing that we hear from our customers straight away that want to do that. The other is to continue to understand the evolution of Genesys. As you pointed out, Paul, at the beginning, we were known for the T server many years ago of CTI capabilities, right? Computer telephony integration. Well, now we've moved into this whole experience space with Xperience as a service. And so continued views of the evolution of that and how it impacts them is the second big thing that we hear customers are looking for. And then the third thing is all about, hey, you know what, at the end of the day, I got to run my business. I also need to get some updates on where's the product going and what are you investing into and what do you see as the direction of that? And so that's the big third one. Now, how we're going to engage on that to make sure we're hitting on what the customers are expecting out of this conference is, you know, we used to just send out a, hey, thank you very much, here's a little simple survey. It's going well beyond that now of real engagement in real time through the conference as people are going through the sessions, as well as follow-up, utilizing this index that Peter's going to talk about to make sure that we're managing ourselves just like we would expect others to manage their customers as well. So we're eating the dog food, drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever you want to say, to make sure that we are being responsive to what our customers are looking for. And at the end of the day, of course, supporting them in their technology needs.
Did you ever think, by the way, the images need to change on eating dog food and drinking Kool-Aid? Right? I mean, it's like, you know, it's like, wow, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Moving right along. First of all, I need to do a public service announcement to Rob Hilson. Rob, your comment, and I always get on Sven for this. When your comment comes close to covering up our guest's face when we put it up, got to cut it down, man. Do a part 1, part 2. That way we can keep all of us in frame.
But nonetheless, thank you for the link.
I'll stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, since take a little levity break, we did this happy hour yesterday. Our CRM Playaz happy hour. I think it was probably the best happy hour we had. This year. I dare to say it could be the best one ever. It's just my opinion. So the whole hour was spent people tossing out their favorite 70s TV shows. So give me a little break from some of the hardcore, business stuff. Give us your favorite 70s show.
I got to say, it has to be Good Times. JJ Walker.
Wow.
Yeah. Dynamite.
I was getting ready to ask him to say that. Wow. I'm so glad. I did not have you pegged for a big JJ guy, but
Not me either.
Hey, Janet Jackson was on the show. I mean, you have to watch it as a young kid.
Yeah, that's right. But I have to say, we won't get too far in the rabbit hole here. Janet Jackson was cute. It was the big sister, Thelma. I had to crush on Thelma. I was a little guy. I was looking all at Thelma. Janet was nice, but anyway. Okay.
God, you two are just way too young for me. I was in college.
You're going to say Mod Squad.
I was in. Well, yeah, someday, not on this show though, I will tell you the story of Mod Squad and the actual place it was based on. Because let's say during a demonstration, I spent some time with the people it was based on. That's all I'll say.
That sounds like a cocktail moment. I can't wait.
It certainly is.
So what can you tell us about what announcements or themes are going to be taking place next week? I know there's going to be announcements that you probably can't talk about, but maybe you could give us a little something that you can talk about to look at.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, some of the things to kind of give you some teasers, there's going to be some conversations around COVID and the impact that it's had on the business in general and to customers, and talking about some of those things and how technology and mind shifts can help address some of that stuff. That's a big one. There's going to be lots of talk on, customers and what they're doing with the technology. Again, best practice sharing and sense of community. There's going to be a lot of focus on just the amazing growth that we've seen based on the demand in the marketplace from our customers, both existing customers and new customers joining us over the last year. Now with over 7,000 customers running Genesys technology, and over half of the Fortune 100, Global 100 running it. So, talking about some of those things and the successes, the growth of our employees on investing in innovation and go to market, around 5,700 employees now across 55 countries, supporting in an empathetic way our customers out there overall. The other key thing is about new and strategic alliances, right? Again, getting back to that multi-cloud is multi-vendor. And so talking about Microsoft and Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Zoom, Adobe, and how these things are coming together with real use cases that are driving that type of empathetic service that people are trying to deliver down to their customer base. And then all about the innovation that's been delivered over the last year, over 250 cloud-based innovations being delivered into the marketplace for our customers around AI and digital and workforce management, and the big increase of purchasing of those things based on the market dynamics. So those are some of the big highlights. There's also going to be one, I'll give you a little teaser and get people coming to live. It's going to be some name changes on some things. Can't disclose what they are here. It's a little premature, but
changing your name
and come to the conference and you'll see some name changes that dovetail into everything we just talked about over the last 30 minutes.
So that means you're going to change your name to Jim Plunkett.
I'd love it.
Dovetails into what we've talked about the last 30 minutes.
I don't know if Jimmy will be empathetic to
that. Because you guys, traditionally people know you for contact center and you're used to dealing with, the folks that are very heavily into metrics, call deflection, time on, all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't feel like it fits with the theme of empathy today. So how have you had any challenges getting, your customers to think beyond the traditional ways of kind of measuring the success of a contact center and focusing more on kind of the empathetic view and how maybe that interaction is only a part of the overall experience, and how to kind of integrate contact center thinking and activity into the broader customer experience realm?
Yeah. Now, call centers are operational by nature, right? You got to know how many people to have on staff to make sure you're delivering the service levels you need. You got to know what, on average, how many interactions you're taking a day. So there's always going to be those metrics that are definitely looked at. Now, what you start seeing is that starting to grow or reach some gray areas where it's not just call center operations, IT running these organizations anymore. The businesses are heavily involved with it. Consumer checking, claims management, inside sales. These organizations are now part. The experience as a service type model is now in the C-suite. It is definitely something top of mind with the CEO to make sure, again, what I just talked about there around, Xperience trumps brand. This is not a new concept that I just announced today. This is something that CEOs are getting their arms around. So as you see that blossom into a broader conversation, yes, the metrics are definitely important to know how to run your operation efficiently. But then you start seeing things like Qualtrics and Medallia, voice of the customer. How are we actually delivering and executing against people's demands? As you start listening to that, you start looking at the MarTech stack and bringing that in of like, what are the buy triggers? Are they happy with our solution? What are they saying about us on that? You start bringing it into our platform and doing the index of empathy and understanding how is the corporation using our technology actually delivering against that. And so, again, metrics are always important, but you start seeing this now. Every company is thinking differently of how they measure well beyond NPS scores and really delivering against the expectation out there. And again, on the sustainability, inclusion, those types of things, many corporations around the world are also investing into those areas just like we are. So I think we're seeing this big movement. It is a global thing. This isn't a call center thing. A global thing on these big topics that absolutely drive the difference between just operationally focused and thinking bigger and broader as a company. Because at the end of the day, it's good for the employees, it's good for your customers. And so that movement is definitely changing from just operationally metrics.
Well, I actually find it really, to your point about this being a global movement, I actually find it really interesting, and I'm making a presumption here, which correct me if I'm wrong, but you have Peter Graff as your chief strategy officer. I remember correctly, he was the head of, I think it was EVP or something of sustainability at SAP before that. So meaning you have a guy driving your strategy who is incredibly experienced and well-versed in sustainability. And I met him a couple of times, I don't know him well, but I do know how good he was. He drove their carbon footprint reduction thing and it worked. And now he's elevated to strategy. And I find that really both, let's call it intriguing and important both. So can you talk a little bit, I'm presuming, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that he's deeply involved in those efforts with you guys.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine him not being, if you know what I mean. It's like
he's the one that made the original proposal to Tony Bates that kicked it off, and we went out and recruited Bridget to take on as chief sustainability officer. Heavy interest from him because it dovetails into strategy as well, to your point. And some of the other things that are important to that as well that Peter owns is like strategic alliances. And so making sure that we have, strategic alliances from a technology perspective, but also common culture in some of these big topics, right? So he is definitely well involved across the board on this.
But when I heard you mentioned his name, I didn't realize he was your CSO, and consequently struck a nerve in a good way.
Yeah, good guy, really good guy to work with.
Yes, yeah.
And, I've been asking all these kind of questions around, contact center moving closer to customer experience from their perspective. What are some of the things that the overall organization can learn from things that are taking place in the contact center and helping the customer experience come from that perspective? I'm sure you're interacting with customers, multiple types of customers. They all kind of have maybe the similar, perspective around making sure they get everything operational. But outside of the contact center, there are things that those folks, those departments can really take advantage of and create an even better customer experience by leveraging some of that knowledge and insight coming from how the contact center has been operating for all these years.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the wealth of data and knowledge in email, in voice recordings of interactions between companies and their customers, right? There's a wealth of knowledge in there. What product issues are we running into that could go back into product management? What services issues are happening out there that need to be addressed that you could spin up new services? Is our pricing in line with customer expectation? I mean, there's a laundry list of these types of things that the rest of the business can benefit that insight of these frontline employees that are touching customers every single day. So some of it can be automated from, mining some of that data, but it's also, feeling the emotion of the actual humans that are on the front line, right? And so supervisors being close with their agent population to understand, like, are there some stressful things happening in the world, financial things, something that might be affecting consumers. One big one we saw through the pandemic was unemployment offices, right? Where we're helping with the technology front, helping with bots to offset the increase in traffic to produce and deliver outstanding citizen care. I mean, this was a huge problem right in the heart of the pandemic, and making sure that that insight was coming back to understand how these government agencies could be more responsive to the needs of the citizens. I mean, that's the type of stuff that is in the heart of the call center.
So given that, and given that you have a lot of, let's say, long-standing customers who were call center customers, still are, and are attempting to make that transition, kind of the way you've evolved the company, they're attempting to evolve their companies from, contact center ops to being more, let's say, focused on service experience. And it's as much as we can speak to it very glibly, it's hard to do. So, but I still want to focus this around the conference. Are you going to be at the conference, so to speak, even virtually or not? Are you going to be able to provide, I'll call it, best practices, tools, maybe even sessions where you have your guys, going through with a group of people, a workshop-y kind of thing. It's not gonna be a full workshop. You don't have that kind of time, but that type of activity, so that people, when they walk away, so to speak, or get up from their seat and leave, really have something that they can take right back to work with them.
There's going to be a lot of that type of conversation in the keynotes, as well as many breakouts around that, where people can walk away from this virtual conference with some new tools maybe that they hadn't seen before to think about this and help them model that. But it always comes best from customer to customer, right? As a producer of this technology, sometimes we can be a little self-serving, like, hey, we got great technology, we believe it, here's some tools. But when customers talk with customers and they start seeing these transitions, it's absolutely much more impactful. I think we would all agree, right?
Yeah.
So we got a few kind of to tee you up. We got VF Corporation that's going to be holding a breakout, and it's specifically, Paul, to what we've been talking about, transforming customer service to elevate to the customer experience. So they're going to share their experience and have some discussion with others to, like, how do we all go on this journey together in the industry? TELUS, the big service provider, is going to have another breakout on what does the hybrid workforce look like, and conduct a panel with other customers, because everybody's still grappling with that, right? Most everybody still has remote agents at home through the pandemic. Some are thinking, when do I bring them back to the office? Do I bring them back to the office?
Right.
Some customers have told us they're never bringing back. They're just going to cut the real estate, right? So that is an important discussion for customers to have within that breakout. Vodafone in Germany is going to be leading a panel on AI. And what does this mean? What are the best practices, use cases? How can we leverage this to be empathetic, but also drive some efficiencies that allow us to augment the traffic and provide that frictionless customer experience to them? And then finally is one I'll highlight. There's many other customer breakouts, but Schwab, the big financial institution, ML, Mary Lou Mako, our head of global sales, is going to be talking with them about digital channels and what does that mean around it. So to your point, Paul, people that come to the conference are going to be exposed by a ton of information, some tools that they can take away from them, and experiences from other customers that will lend insight of helping them down this journey as well.
Can you talk a little bit about, it's the interactions between you and your customers during the pandemic? I'm sure they've been sometimes pretty intense, very meaningful. But what are some of the permanent changes that come out of this? Once we're officially finally past this, what kind of permanent things or changes or impact has this had on the road going forward? Let's talk about, like from a digital transformation perspective. I mean, a lot of people know, a lot of people's plans accelerated because of the pandemic, but what are some of the major changes, not just the acceleration, but the actual changes to digital transformation because of what we've all gone through?
Yeah. There's a few that come to the top of mind. The first one is pure explosion of AI. And it's for a couple reasons. One is every industry, every government has seen a rise in interactions. And if you're going to provide that seamless experience, you need to use some AI to help augment that traffic. Otherwise, you're just going to have hold times and response times that are just way too long. So that's one big area. The other was digital, and seeing people really want to have proactive digital experiences that start on day one and maybe don't finish till day 7. And it goes through an asynchronous journey of being engaged through those type of models. The other big one was, employees, and this is broader than the call center, but employees are also families. And so having to work within the constraints of school at home with your kids, and having to manage those types of situations, getting lunch for the kids because they're not at school getting lunch, and still trying to fit in your day job. And as a agent or a representative in these big companies on the front line with customers, the ability to have, you know, some schedules that are a little fluid, so you can actually have that, you know, work and life integrated together on that. So these are some big ones that are happening out there, but we have seen, you know, and I watch CNBC quite regularly. I hear so many CEOs of retailers, of tech companies talking about the movement to cloud as that way to get the business agility. And we saw a lot of companies that were impacted by the pandemic, where their, you know, corporations had been shut down because of shelter at home. And so leaning in on, hey, let's take this moment to advance our technology foundation to be ready as we come out of the pandemic, being responsive to all these trends we're seeing, and a huge advancement. And a lot of these CEOs on CNBC that I watch is, you know, they're talking about, you know, 5 years of technology advancement around AI and digital in just the last year. It's accelerated it because it's needed in the world right now. So that type of stuff has been very insightful as we go through product roadmap planning, what the marketplace is looking for. Now, the beauty is many of our customers were already on cloud with us before the pandemic, so they benefited. Others leaned into it heavily through the pandemic, and we're still seeing that acceleration of companies getting there. Business continuity plus agility.
So you said one of the things you discussed actually struck me really interesting, because I haven't heard it discussed as such, even though, you know, it's implied in conversations, which was the let's say vast increase in the use of AI, which, as I think the way you put it, was due to the, you know, humongous increase in interactions. But do you have any customer stories that you're able to tell on that? I just find that really interesting, because I haven't heard it articulated specifically until you just said that as a result of what's occurred with the pandemic.
Yeah, lots of customers utilizing things like voice and chat bots to augment the traffic. Because for the simple questions, why wait on the line or wait for an email to respond? Just go up and have a quick chat on the web page, and boom, you get an answer really quickly. And a lot of those interactions are really basic questions like store hours or directions or what's the price of this, right? That voice and chatbots are adequately appropriate to do that. The other one that comes to mind is like Swisscom, another big telco in Europe running our platform, in utilizing predictive routing. And it's basically looking at, you know, the tea leaves of this individual that's coming into the call center, either email or voice or whatever, and saying, you know, can we predict what this customer's need is based on the data we know? And who's best to talk to this person or engage with this person to provide that seamless interaction? But it also has an effect to what we were talking about previously, which is it's more productive. You can get through more interactions when you got the right people talking to each other straight away versus somebody going, oh, I don't know the answer to that, let me get somebody, right? So good for service and good for productivity to help offset all that traffic that's coming in.
Cool. Thank you.
I want to touch on the kind of, you know, the customer partner kind of relationship that you have with Microsoft.
Microsoft, yeah. So we just launched Engage Multicloud on Azure as a SaaS offer. It just went out the door end of March, so just couple months ago. Something we've been working on over the past year, and the response has been fantastic for it, including them themselves. So they're a great partner of ours and a great customer of ours. So running Engage and ramping up on that with the platform. A great partner, not only from an Azure perspective for a cloud infrastructure for us to run our service, but also the integration with Dynamics and Teams and cognitive AI that they produce into the marketplace. And so there's a really good working relationship, not only for them internally using our solution around the world, but also for our teams working together on what new innovative things can we pull together between us? How can we leverage each other's strengths to benefit a customer that's using both of us today? And how can we go to market effectively to make sure that we are telling the story that helps companies get to where we're talking about around empathy and both employees and customer experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that's very representative, I think, of something that's very important now, which is, as I think you mentioned it earlier, let's face it, I mean, a lot, especially enterprise customers, which is, your primary focus, they have other systems and they work with other companies. And the other thing we're looking at is there's probably no single platform or ecosystem that can absolutely handle all the needs of a single large company. So obviously, given that, especially if you're focused around being an empathetic company that wants to really engage with customers to do, to make sure that they get what they need, you're going to pretty much have to think through strategic partnerships and sometimes just, technical partnerships and so on. So Genesys is always, from, let's say, early history on, gone from sort of very early, it was just kind of dabbling. Then it became more and more serious over the years. And I'd be very curious as to where Genesys is on just partner strategy right now and how they're thinking of it. And aside from a Microsoft, who are other partners that they think are really important to them from the standpoint of, what you try to provide to your customers.
Yeah, for sure. And so Peter Graff, we were just talking about, he owns the strategic alliances. But the beauty is, with Tony Bates on down into his leadership team, we have vast networks of people that we've worked with over the years in many industries and many companies. So there's some personal relationships in addition to just the technology fit that actually helps in these connections of driving that. Adobe, Microsoft, Google, Qualtrics we just announced on that. Mm-hmm. Many different partnerships that make a lot of sense because, again, customers are asking us for those integrations, for those capabilities to actually improve employee and customer experience. So yeah, we take this very seriously. It's all the way at the strategic level on Tony's leadership team with Peter, but we all participate across and deep into the organization to make sure we're executing on what needs to be done. It's amazing to see it come to life. I can't say the customer's name, but we just did a demo of the future state of their solution as they migrate certain components. And this included IBM. It included Redbox. It included Verint. It included Medallia in this overall scenario that just shows the power of it all coming together and the simplicity of use for this major financial institution to leverage in their delivery of that. It is powerful when you see it all come together.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this has been a no,
go ahead.
I was going to say this has really been a lot of information and a lot of fun, but I want to make sure to give people something that they should definitely come and check out Xperience 21 for. Right now, you got to say if you at least come for this, it'll be worth your while.
It's absolutely going to be about the sense of community, coming together, learning, sharing, and being a part of the overall experience is going to absolutely be the hook that gets everybody engaged and having fun.
Okay, so, well, let's take that a little further on the conference itself. So we're talking June 23rd, June 24th. We're talking, what time does it actually start? The East Coast time, let's say, since that's where I am and I'm very East Coast centric.
Yeah, it's early. So it's early morning on the West Coast side for me. So I got to get up a little earlier, but no problem on any of that stuff. People have ability to come in anytime that they want to make sure that they're taking advantage of the sessions overall. And so right here, when you got this slide coming up, here's the event overall for everybody's information. June 23rd to the 24th, you can see all the speakers that we have, 80 different speakers, internal and external. And so something for everybody on that. Partners presenting as well, as you can see there, but it's going to span over those 2 days. And we broke it up, instead of having a real long day, break it up so it's more consumable. And as you go to our website and register for it, you'll get all the details of the specific agenda for you.
Can I just tell you, like the last, I think it was the 2019 experience. It was one of the last face-to-face conferences I went to. I was telling Paul, that was like one of the best conferences I've been to in a number of years. And that the keynote was so different than any other ones that I've been to. It was this guy, I always have to make sure, I think I'm going to say his name right, Platon. He's this like worldwide famous photographer who has built a career taking these great pictures and images of like the world's most dynamic people, presidents, some cases dictators, sports figures. And this is no joke. He was telling such interesting stories around as part of displaying these pictures. I literally saw these hardcore analyst types who go to all sorts of events all the time, literally crying. I was like, I can't say who it was. I was like, wow. I mean, it was so good and it was so different. That's why that experience stands out for me. And I can't wait to check it out this year. I know it's going to be a little different because it's virtual, but you guys do a great job with your events, and I'm looking forward to this one as well.
Yeah, there'll be some surprises in there for sure. We'll hold it at that, but there's going to be some of those types of surprises as well, Brett.
Oh, so in other words, do I need to get my hanky then?
Well, I will tell you something though. All those analysts who cried were drummed out of the analyst guild immediately after. That was it.
You guys are always fun.
It was great.
Rumor has it they were all Patriots fans, but
that's right.
Now, John, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks again for
always. You are awesome, man. Well, it's long-standing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, love you guys, man. We
love you right back.
Absolutely.
All right. Big hug coming in.
So that's right. Check them out next week. And actually, next week, kind of right in the midst of Xperience 21, Thursday at 3:00 Eastern, we'll be here and we'll be getting a little bit of an update of what's going on, what's taking place, getting some perspective in the midst of the hurricane that will be Xperience 21. So got to check that out as well. Hurricane in a good way.
Yeah. Right. We will be the eye of the storm at 3 p.m.
We'll be in the eye of the tuck rule storm.
Right. Oh, wow. You had to bring it right down.
That hurt me just as much as it hurt him because we lost the Super Bowl after that tuck rule. So
again, I didn't even care, and that bothered me. Right.
In the meantime, on behalf of John Hernandez and I guess Jim Plunkett as well, I am Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz, and although this is a special show, we have to end our shows like we always do, like this.